Good morning and welcome. I'm Kathy Delianis, a member of the church's governing board and our current treasurer. Whether you're on Zoom today or here in the sanctuary, it's so exciting to see people in the sanctuary. We're so glad you're with us on this cool fall morning. Wherever you are, however you identify, and whomever you love, know that you're welcome here. I have a few announcements this morning. First of all, thank you to everyone who participated in the auction. We had our live via Zoom event last night, and even though we weren't in person, I think we had fun. And I'm very pleased to announce that we raised almost $19,000. So auction statements have been updated, so you can go online and see what you've won, who's coming to dinner, and also we do have some unsold items, so you can go buy a few more things if you need to. And I really want to thank my skeleton team of auction crew, most of whom are back here today, the 3 AV people and Hannah, my co-chair, so thank you. So my next announcement is about our next big upcoming event. My second favorite event after the auction is our alternative gift market. And for those of you who are not familiar with it, it's a wonderful way to make donations to charity in people's names as a holiday gift instead of buying stuff. So it's a wonderful event. It's going to be virtual again this year. It starts in less than 2 weeks. It runs from November 26th through December 5th. There'll be more information online, but we have both local and international charities, and I think there's over 60 of them. So it's a wonderful, wonderful way to give to charity and also honor people without buying stuff. So this morning, our service is led by Reverend Scott Alexander. We're also joined by Linda Weaver, our Director of Religious Education, Cynthia Young, our Music Director, and Jessie Leong, our accompanist. Bob Anthony is serving as a Worship Associate. Ron Bracey, David Nemi, and Amelia Turner are running the technical side of worship, and Dre Betancourt is the chat usher. Now let us center ourselves for worship as we listen to Jesse play his Prelude to Thanksgiving by George Winston.
Beautiful, Jesse. Thank you. Bob Anthony and I are sharing these opening words with you. From our fragmented personal worlds, we gather here to seek wholeness.
From the feeling of isolation and loneliness, we come here to feel connectedness.
From the vast evils in the world, we seek here to relate to what is good.
From the tempting idols of the mind and the confusion of the spirit, we would find here something of meaning.
From the proclamations of doom on every hand, we would find here what is hopeful.
From thoughtless indifference, we would be charged here with the spirit of vital faith in ourselves and love to our fellow human beings.
It is good to be together.
In our church, we sing a covenant together every Sunday as a way of recommitting to each other. Our covenant is love is the spirit of this church. If you are zooming in from home, the words will be in your chat box. The words will also appear in the video. We will sing along with this beautiful video of our choir and congregation singing together. If you are visiting us today for the first time, we hope you will accept this song as our blessing to you.
My church is built of neither brick nor stone, for its love as the spirit of this church is a shelter fashioned from our hearts alone. Yes, it's love as the spirit of this church. Oh, it's love. Yes, it's love. Yes, it's love as the spirit of this church. Oh, yes, not the walls or steeple, but a gathered people is what makes up the spirit of this church. It is no stained glass that makes these windows bright, for it's love that's the spirit of this church. They're illuminated by compassion's light. Yes, it's love that's the spirit of this church. Amen. For it's love. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another in fellowship.
Good morning. My name is Jesse Leon. I'm the accompanist here at UCR. The opening hymn is number 1031, Filled with Loving Kindness. If you're here in the sanctuary, you may hum along. And if you are at home, please feel free to sing out as much as you'd like. The words will be in your chat box. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
Thank you, Jesse. Our chalice lighting words for today are from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Harrisonburg, Virginia. To face the world's darkness, a chalice of light. To face the world's coldness, a chalice of warmth. To face the world's terrors, a chalice of courage. To face the world's turmoil, a chalice of peace. May its glow fill our spirits, our hearts, and our lives.
Have a number of things to manipulate. So good morning. And oh, what is this? We have a hedgehog hiding behind our flowers. I wonder why it's here with us today. I'm not sure, but it does remind me of a story. Once, there was a winter that was so cold, the animals were freezing and dying. A group of hedgehogs gathered together in a burrow to try to keep each other warm. Being hedgehogs, however, they had spines or quills, and when they got close to each other, they got stabbed. That hurt. So they moved further away from each other, and then they froze. The hedgehogs had a decision to make. They either had to put up with the little hurts and annoyances of the quills or freeze to death. The hedgehogs decided to huddle together and keep each other warm. And because of that, they survived the winter. Those hedgehogs remind me a bit of people. Most of us need to be in community, have friends, and be able to speak openly with other people. But when we do that, we can get hurt. We can hurt others. And being human, we sometimes make mistakes, right? But at UUCR, we sing a covenant each Sunday. And when we do that, we're promising to one another to be patient with each other, to call people in and ask them to do better if they hurt someone else, and to protect each other and the congregation if there's from serious harm. I hope as we connect with one another in person and at a physical distance, we'll keep in mind the hedgehogs. I know I will.
Thank you, Linda. So now is the time in our service when we share our joys and concerns with one another so that no one ever has to hold them alone. If you're joining us remotely this morning, you may wish to light a real or virtual candle wherever you are to mark what is on your heart. And as those of you who are here can come forward this morning when Jesse is playing, and I will hand you a candle, Labra, to light a candle here in our sanctuary bowl. If you would like to share something in the congregational chat, if you're coming to us remotely, please write to all attendees of your joy or sorrow or concern, but please remember that what you write is public. Please read each other's joys and concerns, then enter into your own time of reflection and prayer as we listen now to Jesse play our meditation music. Spirit of life and love that animates our creation, we are grateful for this community that is so faithfully with us in both times of joy and sorrow. We hold in our hearts this morning all who grieve, those facing any illness or disability within themselves or in their family and friends. Whether shared here this morning or held silently in our hearts, may our joys be multiplied in community, and may all here find comfort and calm. Amen. One of the greatest joys of a congregation is to welcome new members. Even in the time of COVID, we have welcomed new people. Hannah, will you please come forward and help us with our new member ceremony? We'll be inviting the new members who are here up in just a moment.
Okay, hello. One of the most important and joyous rituals of any congregation is that of welcoming its newest members. This morning, it is our privilege and joy to welcome into the midst those who have joined our church over the recent months. First, let me introduce new members who will be with us in person this morning. As I call out your name, please come forward. Kristen Grifta and Patricia Gordon Rice. Those people who were unable to be with us in person are Ashley Kissamore and Rose Rosetree.
Dear friends, I'm speaking directly to the two of you this morning. By becoming members of our congregation, you become a part of a community of people who know that we have a collective and a personal responsibility to do what we each can to make this world a better, more just, and humane place. So will you walk with us as we strive to live by our religious principles, to serve humanity in the wider world, and become as fully human as we can, growing, all of us, in the ways of gentleness, wisdom, compassion, and understanding? If so, please say, I will. So be it. Will you then say, do you have the words of acceptance in front of you? Will you please say them? I will speak them also so that they can all hear. We accept membership in this Unitarian Universalist congregation, trusting that this commitment will enrich both ourselves and others. We aspire to lend ourselves both to the work of this religious community and to its many celebrations of what it means to be human. May the strands of caring and connection between all of us be strengthened day to day, year by year, so that here together we build a true and nurturing religious community. And will the members and friends of this congregation please rise as they're able and join with me in welcoming the new members? And I believe you all have it printed in your orders of service. Say it with me. We rejoice when new members express the desire to walk with us in our quest for community, justice, decency, and love. We are encouraged by your presence and strengthened by your contributions to our diversity. We accept our responsibility to help you feel safe, nurtured, and included in this free and open congregation. We delight that you have formally joined the congregation. Welcome. And on behalf of the Board of Trustees, we do welcome you into full participation in our community. We invite you to make your membership meaningful by sharing with us your unique and special talents and your time, knowing that often what we receive depends on how much we have chosen to invest. It's true in all venues of life. We are an active and busy congregation, and hopefully over coming months we'll be gathering here many more times, more frequently during the week. Know that you are welcome to each and every event and part of our life. We need your gifts and talents if our congregation is all that it can become. Welcome. And now let us say together our covenant. Love is the spirit of our church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So as I come forward to greet the two of you with a bump, Hannah has a beautiful little Unitarian Universalist flaming chalice lapel pin on a card with our covenant. And so we welcome you officially. And it is our hope that in January we'll have a nice little wine and cheese reception for you and the other new members who've joined in the last year and a half or so. We'll notify you about that more social occasion. Thank you so much. And now the offering.
The second Sunday of every month, our worship service collection is given to a charity selected by our Social Action and Justice Committee. For November, the committee had selected Cornerstone's Gifts for Kids program. But as of last week, all the gifts for kids that we had committed to had been fulfilled. So this Sunday will just be a regular collection. So anything you put into the box will just go into our general fund, and it's separate from your pledge. So please do not put your pledge payments in there because it confuses the bookkeeper and the treasurer, who's me. Thank you. Oh, do I need to talk about afterwards? No, I'll do that later.
Our wonderful UUCR choir cannot be here with us in person, but we are bringing them to you via a video that we made about a week ago. We're very excited because this was the first time we were able to come indoors and record inside the sanctuary together. The song is Sim Shalom, which is a beautiful Hebrew prayer set to music by Alan Kaplan. The words to the translation, I should say, to the Hebrew lyrics do appear in the video, so you'll be able to follow along with the meaning of the song. So we hope you enjoy Sim Shalom.
The This morning, I want to struggle out loud in this house of goodness and hope with one of the most troubling and vexing questions known to humanity, the question and problem of evil. This has been a theological topic that has challenged me personally for the entire 49 years of my ministry. It was almost that long ago when I wrote a major academic paper on this subject for the Greenfield Group, a historic UU Ministers Theological Study Group. And the title of my paper was Finding Hope in a Post-Holocaust World, which was published in a national UU journal and received fairly wide attention at the time in our movement. I began that paper with a haunting description of the evil of which humans are capable by Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel. This is a photograph that you're about to see of Mr. Wiesel at 15 years of age, taken just before his mother and father and 3 sisters were loaded on train cars by the Nazis, sent from the Jewish ghetto in Signet, Romania, to the death camp in Auschwitz. In his harrowing book, Night, I guess we don't have that photograph yet, but it's all right. There it is. There he is. In his harrowing book, Night, published in 1960, he describes what he saw as an adolescent boy when he arrived at Auschwitz by that crowded cattle train. And I warn you, this description of what happened next is hard for any human being to listen to. Wiesel. Not far from us, flames were leaping up from a ditch, gigantic flames. They were burning something. A lorry drew up at the pit and delivered its load. Little children, babies. Yes, I saw it with my own eyes, those children in the flames. So this is where we were going. A little farther on was another larger ditch for adults. I pinched my face. Was I still alive? Was I awake? I could not believe it. How could it be possible for them to burn people, children, and for the world to keep silent? No, none of this could be true, Wiesel writes. It was a nightmare. Soon I should awake with a start, my heart pounding, and find myself back in the bedroom of my childhood among my books. I told my father that I did not believe they could burn people in our age, that humanity would never tolerate it. Humanity, my father responded, humanity is not concerned with us. Today, everything is allowed. Anything is possible, even these crematoriums, these crematories. Elie Wiesel was the only member of his family to survive Auschwitz. His mother and sisters were sent immediately to the gas chambers, and his father was later beaten to death by Nazi guards. Here is the actual picture of Wiesel and other half-starved Holocaust survivors being released from that death camp early spring 1945 when the GIs arrived. In my paper then, I began my own theological reflection on evil after I told this horrible, unimaginable story. After Auschwitz, I wrote, this planet is no longer a place for innocence. Auschwitz is commanding historical proof that there exists within the human experience a primordial and permanent capacity for radical, irredeemable evil. The Nazi nightmare was so deep and vast as to make it impossible to theologically dismiss as the psychotic aberration of a few demonic megalomaniacs. Hitler and his henchmen, I wrote, were only able to turn 6 million Jews and others they deemed subhuman into soap, ash, and fertilizer with the systematic support of all sectors of a highly developed Western society and the acquiescence and some complicity of the so-called civilized world, including the United States, which was either incapable or unwilling to act. The Holocaust, I wrote, belongs to all of us. It speaks with a terrible clarity of an essential, deep-down ugliness that must be owned by the whole of the human family. There can be no successful theological escape from its horror. All religions, all systems of human hope, including our Unitarian Universalist faith, must sooner or later come to terms, I ended, with the stark reality of human evil. Now, since I wrote these words, human history has only confirmed this stark analysis of the human potential for evil. I wrote this decades before the Khmer Rouge government in Cambodia senselessly slaughtered millions of its own citizens, and before almost 1 million defenseless Tutsi men, women, and children were hacked to death by their Rwandan Hutu neighbors in a genocidal rage. I wrote this before the death camps and ethnic cleansing in Bosnia and Herzegovina, before the barbarism that took place in Darfur, and before anyone could even imagine a day like September 11, when innocent people were flown into skyscrapers. Perhaps there have been a few tranquil times in human history when extreme optimism about human nature could ignore the reality of such moral depravity and darkness. But it is not possible, I think, for anyone who has been alive in this tortured century to doubt the stark reality of human evil within the march of history, within the actions of nations, and within the recesses of individual human hearts. So I will rather sadly and honestly answer my own theological question. Yes, of course, there is something called evil. It is real and powerful, and it is, like it or not, a permanent and pernicious part of our collective human experience. But we Unitarian Universalists, perennial optimists about the human experience that we are, have always been a bit squeamish about evil and have hesitated over the centuries to give it a permanent and prevalent place in human nature. Just look at our 7 positively worded principles. When we describe the worldview that frames our religion, we talk about worth and dignity. We talk about justice, equity, and compassion, about peace, liberty, love, and truth, among other virtues. But nowhere in this statement, nowhere in our statement of faith do we ever mention evil or human wrongdoing. Nowhere, not a word about the negatives. My colleague David Rankin might have been speaking for our whole religious movement when he once confessed, and this is a tongue-in-cheek quote, "I personally have tried every conceivable technique to avoid confronting the reality of evil. I attended an upbeat Unitarian seminary. I gave up newspapers. I read romantic poetry and the complete works of Emerson. I took up golf and hiking. I saw The Sound of Music 4 times. I refused to vote. I listened to nothing but Doris Day records. But evil was still there." This liberal avoidance of evil is something that people in our faith tradition come by honestly. Our UU avoidance of the reality, nature, and depth of human evil goes way back to at least Ralph Waldo Emerson, one of our saints, and the other idealistic, transcendentalist, Unitarian, and Universalist thinkers of the 19th century who refused to accept that human persons or society had within them ontologically, that is, permanently and structurally, had ontologically within them, within their basic human nature, anything we might call evil. What our transcendentalist forebears believed, optimists and enlightened era humanists that they were, was that because human beings were created by a good and loving God, that was one of the essentials of their faith, as God's divinely inspired children, we possessed only an essence of goodness. This, of course, flew theologically right into the face of Puritanism, which conversely, in its own negative theological excesses that mirrored our UU positive ones, Calvinism and Puritanism saw human persons, nature, and society as filled with wickedness, depravity, and evil, but not our idealistic forebears. In his famous Divinity School address, delivered at the graduation ceremony of the Harvard Divinity School in 1841, and widely reprinted around the world, Emerson proclaimed that the universe is singularly ruled, defined, and informed by God's overarching goodness and by his light, not by the powers and principalities of darkness. Here are his actual words. The world, Emerson said, is not the product of manifold power, meaning the world is not the torn product of the co-equal forces of God and the devil. But rather, Emerson said, the world is a product of one will, one mind, and that one mind, God's, is everywhere active, in every ray of the star, in every wavelet of the pool. Good is positive. Evil, he wrote, is merely privative. That is, not absolute, he said. It is like cold, which is simply the privation of heat. All evil, he wrote, is so much death or non-entity. Benevolence is absolute and real, for all things proceed out of this same spirit, God's, which is differently named love, justice, and temperance. And then he ended, whilst a man seek good ends, he is strong by the whole strength of his nature. Now, as quaint as it may now seem, this rather stunningly positive theological assertion that only goodness is real and that evil is simply not equal but the absence of God's good light, nonetheless continues to inform a lot of our progressive thinking. What Emerson was asserting, and what has been optimistically echoed by many UUs since, and others, perhaps some of my colleagues today, is that only good is real and powerful and present within us, and that evil, instead of being a concrete and real reality within us, is merely the absence of good, much as darkness of night that we now have descending at about 5 o'clock can be understood not as its own thing, but as simply the absence of the sun's light. Do you all get this crucial theological, ontological distinction between seeing good and evil as equal realities and seeing goodness as the only real reality and evil as simply the absence of good? That's a crucial idea in theology. And I believe it creates incredible theological problems for us as progressive people when we, with the rest of humanity, have to face evil in all of its complex and widespread manifestations, in holocausts, in genocide. We ask, how can the Tutus and the Hutsis kill 1 million of each other? How is that possible, we ask? When we're faced with warfare and terrorism, human rights abuses, and injustices of all sorts, how do we deal with evil? Look, one needs to look no further in this year or any year than the headlines of our daily newspapers for irrefutable evidence of the presence, persistence, and perniciousness of evil in human affairs, whether it be the violent acts of sexual predators who attack others for their own pleasure, or organized police death squads in places like the Philippines, or seemingly endless string of terrorist bombings. That we have daily reminders that evil is real. I don't know what you think about evil, but I believe in evil. I believe it is real, built right into the structure of persons and the universe. While I do not believe, and this is crucial, that there are evil persons per se, and more on that crucial distinction in a moment, while I do not believe there are evil persons per se, I do believe there is real evil in persons and in the particular acts that some persons commit. And I believe there is evil in communities and societies, and I believe there's evil in institutions and their structures and corporate dynamics and deeds. I believe there is evil in governments and nations, of course, and in their policies. I believe in evil. It is not, as Emerson and so many other UUs over the centuries have fancifully believed, it's not simply the absence of light. It's its own powerful, ugly thing rooted deep down in the heart of human things. There, I've said it. And the rafters here did not collapse in this sanctuary. Of course, you know, many of you were raised in this tradition with very high hopes. One of the old sayings is humanity, onward and upward forever. Does anybody really believe that anymore? I don't. But frankly, I don't think that if you and I take a really good, hard, long look at the dynamics and the reality of human society, that we can come to any other conclusion. Evil is its own real, permanent thing. But having said this, I do not believe in something called the devil. Next slide, if you have it up. I found this on the web. You know, this embodied satanic someone who's running around the world trying to perpetrate pain and injustice and horrors. Now, whenever it's possible for me to avoid criticizing the religious beliefs of others, I try. But I'm personally struck theologically dumb when someone tells me that they believe in the devil, an actual cosmic personality, concrete person. Do you remember U.S. Senator Rick Santorum? He's still on the news shows a lot. When he was running for president, he said in a 2008 speech that he believed there was a spiritual war going on in creation between what he calls the father of lies and God. In other words, he was articulating there's a real theological battle in creation between God and the father of lies, otherwise known as the devil, which Rick Santorum just 12 years ago said, quote, "The devil has set his sights on a good, decent, powerful, influential country, the United States of America. If you were Satan, who else would you attack in this day and age? There is no one else to go after than the United States." That was his worldview. Mr. Santorum, of course, can believe whatever he wants, but I just think this is, I think he should stick with politics and leave theology to somebody a little more sophisticated. I don't believe in the devil, and what's more, at this point, and this point is very theologically important to me, I don't believe that there are ontologically something called evil persons. Yes, there are plenty of people who from time to time or even systematically in their lives do evil things. Evil things often cloaked in goodness. But I do not believe that they're evil people per se. That is, human beings who by their very core nature are fundamentally evil through and through, no matter how many times they act in irresponsible ways. For me, at least, there's a crucial theological distinction between acknowledging there is evil in persons, in institutions, in communities, and asserting that there are ontologically evil persons, institutions, and societies. I don't believe that. Let me try, then if evil is not then embodied permanently in people, what is it? Well, I've attempted to come up with a simple definition of evil for your consideration. Evil is any volitional or willful act of human violence or disregard which persons either individually or corporately in groups, communities, or governments commit or allow, which leads to the unnecessary destruction and substantive denigration, diminishment, or dehumanization of persons or society. Let me give some common definitions then, common examples of what would be covered by this definition of evil. Murder, which destroys the life, of course, is evil. Assault, battery, rape, they dehumanize persons. They're all evil. Physical, psychological, or sexual abuse, whether of a child or a spouse or a stranger, is evil because it diminishes and dehumanizes those upon whom it's perpetrated. Torture, false and cruel imprisonment, purposeful starvation, allowing starvation, terrorism, genocide, enslavement, forced migrations of population, to name just a few, are evil because these acts diminish and dehumanize persons. And there are, of course, many other examples of evil you and I could give. In our world, the evil is not only real, it is also common. All right. So if I have you theologically this far along with me, agreeing at least at some level that evil is real and can be quantified and named in specific situations, then the next thing we must do, I think, to be honest, is to acknowledge that evil is not just something out there beyond, I don't know, me. in other persons and societies. I'm good, but other people are evil. Evil, whether you like to face this truth or not, is something that can be found, of course, in our own natures, in our own instincts and actions, in our own culture and institutions, and in many things we perpetrate and allow in our lives and society, such as injustice, oppression, indifference, and inequality. So again, while I passionately believe there's no such thing as evil people or evil nations per se, the potential for evil is nonetheless right here, right now, in us and around us and among us in ways we must fearlessly theologically own if we are ever to control it or minimize it in human affairs. Several years ago, my friend John Corrado, who was a minister from Michigan, wrote this rather blunt reflection about evil and its proximity to us. He wrote to his congregation, "The primary violence, the violence you and I must recognize, the violence we can do something about, the violence we can spare the world from, is the violence within each one of us. Evil is not just out there, it's in here, in each of us too. We must recognize I am as capable as violent as the overt killer. I am just as liable to have violent feelings, violent thoughts, violent wishes. That should help me," John wrote, "understand the person who is unwilling or unable to control such inner violence." And then he goes on, "The nature of the killer, like the nature of the lover, is not a thing apart from me. Me, killer, lover, are all part of my human nature. In my human nature, I have the stuff of poets, prophets, and saints. I also have the stuff of manipulators, slanderers, and murderers. I am not, in my basic human nature, the better of any person. I may make choices that are better or more judicious or just luckier." And then John ends, "I will humbly accept the possibility of violence and evil within, and I will try to overpower it with the love that is also within." And Paul Carnes, who was president of our denomination back in the 60s, pretty much said the same thing before his death when he said, "Somebody sent me a record of the Holocaust, but it's not just the Nazis. They could exist and act only because of something deep within human nature. They did not invent man's inhumanity to man. It would be comforting if we could believe they did. Then we could forget that for much of our history, the only good Indian was a dead Indian. The fact is that there is a lot of cruelty and injustice in all of us." I have found that there are lots of people, especially here in America, and yes, in UU circles, ready and willing to say, "Oh yeah, there's a lot of evil out there." But they're more hesitant to say, "But evil resides in me too." Roger Fritz, who was the minister of the Cedar Lane Church for many years, I just spoke to him last week. He talks about the psychological concept of splitting. Listen to the way he put it in his own sermon on evil. In psychology, splitting refers to our tendency to view people as all good or all bad. In splitting the world into good and bad, Trumpers and us, for example, in splitting the world into good and bad, we idealize the good people as heroes, we demonize the bad people, we see them as enemies. In extreme splitting, Roger goes on, people see no middle ground, no in-between, no gray area. This is the way to organize what is otherwise a very complicated and complex world. This splitting gives structure and organization to our lives. It gives us purpose and direction and a clear identity. It protects us from feeling the anxiety that comes with uncertainty. And in this divided country right now, both sides are doing this splitting. Both sides are doing this splitting. Pages sometimes stick together. The point about evil I am making here is that if we both as individuals and collectively as Americans are ever to develop a mature and honest understanding of evil, we must understand our own capacity for and complicity in the structures and actions of evil. Again, it's terribly spiritually dangerous for us to imagine that evil is only something quote unquote out there in others. If we are to develop a mature and responsible understanding of evil, we must understand that it is something that can and often is very close to home within us and within the communities we love. And so in conclusion, this Unitarian Universalist believes in evil. Every morning in the newspapers I see it. It's out there in the world. But as a Unitarian Universalist, unlike Ralph Waldo Emerson, may his sainted memory rest lightly on our hearts, I also believe that evil is in me, it's in you, it's in the human nature, the very human nature that jumped out of the trees and the savannas in Africa with us. I further believe that the potential for evil can readily be found in communities and in societies. You've heard about the herd instinct, about when the reptilian brain takes over, tribes do terrible things to one another. And we had better start, all of us, spiritually growing up and facing the demanding truth that evil is in us too. But with all that starkly and honestly said, I am not a pessimist about human nature and the human future. I'm not a pessimist because even though I accept the power and reality of evil in our midst, I also see, of course, the powerful potential for good and kindness that's demonstrably, I think, stronger and more deeply rooted in our societies than is the human potential for evil. Day to day, an overwhelming majority of human beings on this planet are wonderful, kind, good. Even in this divided country, as you walk around Northern Virginia, almost everyone is good. I can't, of course, empirically prove it. It's a statement of personal faith. My faith in the inherent worth and dignity of persons and in societies. My faith that there's an inherent powerful goodness in the species and in the communities we create. Yes, evil is real and powerful and grievously here to stay, but we can always make more progress toward a better society and toward goodness. Yes, I know pessimism about the human enterprise is pretty easy these days. A lot of people were very upset about the Glasgow conference not going as far as it could for climate change. I read the morning paper and the evening paper too, and the evening news, and I know that the list of human failure and cruelty is long. And I am terrified, as many of you are, about what's happening in our country in terms of the meanness and the racism and the ugliness and the guns. Our society has great evil within it. These are, by any measure, violent and discouraging times in our nation and planet. And in this moment of history, when we might be able to tempted to doubt the balance of human good and evil, I think it's sometimes hard for us to understand that it is weighted in the direction of good. But regardless of how the balance between good and evil seems in any particular moment, regardless even whether or not I'm right, that humans are naturally more inclined to goodness and altruism than they are to evil and cruelty, there is always something that we, as a purposeful people of love and compassion and hope, based on those 7 principles of ours, there's always something more we can do. Now more than ever, the world needs those who are ready to name and confront evil when they see it, even when it's very close to home. Now more than ever, the world needs men and women who are ready at every given moment with full strength of heart to lend their the weight of their few ounces of humanity on the side of goodness. Even in discouraging times, we are free, blessedly free as human beings, to live lives of clarity, of compassion, of gentleness and decency and love. out of that natural and holy goodness that Emerson and all of our forebears believed in, and that our principles call us to. Please, my dear friends, never doubt the power and the presence of the inherent goodness within you. Yes, evil is real, but there is so much more goodness. Live fully and finally from that goodness. Bless the world. It will be, for us in this time, enough. And I say and mean to you, amen.
Our closing hymn today is hymn number 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. We will sing along with a lovely video that was created about a year ago. I would like to thank the soloists. It's a quartet of singers from our choir who perform in this video: Lisa Gunderman, Kara Fortner, Mike Schmidt, and David Nemi. If you are at home, we invite you to rise as you are willing or able and join in with gusto. The words will be in your chat box. If you are here with us in the congregation, we ask that you please hum along, and the words are in your order of service. Thank you.
My life flows on in endless song above its lamentation. I hear the real, low of him that heals a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars, I know the truth liveth. What though the darkness round me close, sounds in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost core, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? How can I keep from singing? How can I keep from singing?
It was the founder of Methodism, John Wesley, who said, "Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all times you can, to all the people you can, for as long as you can."
Our postlude today is a lovely song called Our Loving Will Change the World by the wonderful Ricky Byers. I believe the words are in your order of service and hopefully will appear in the chat box at home as well. And again, if you are at home, please sing along with us. It's a very catchy tune and easy to join in. If you're in this room, we invite you to hum. I would like to thank so much our wonderful colleague, Jeff Lower, who is a fabulous percussionist, and he is joining us up here. Thank you, Jeff. Love, love, love everybody. Love, love, love. When it's hard to love, love, our loving will change the world. Care, 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 everybody. Care, 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 for those who need our care, care. Our caring will change the world. Find me here, singing with you, hearts wide open for what we came to do. Wind in the trees sings a melody true. Love everybody, let your love shine through. Everybody sing love, love, love everybody. Love, love, love. When it's hard to love, love, our loving will change the world. Care, care, care for each other. Care, care, care for those who need our care, care. Our caring will change the world. Our loving will change the world. Your loving will change the world. Our loving will change the world.
That was great, thanks. We invite our congregants attending worship on Zoom to join us for our virtual Greet Your Neighbor to discuss the service theme and enjoy fellowship. Please note that all participants in today's online coffee hour will be in one room. They're not going to be broken up into breakout rooms. Also, please use the chat box as a virtual receiving line to thank those who put together this service. And for those of you in person, I look forward to chatting with you after the service. Unfortunately, we have no coffee.